We'll give it another minute. Gabe, we'd love for you to unmute and introduce yourself to the group.
Hey, my name is Gabe. I'm with Foster Nashville. We're a very, very small organization that does crisis foster care in Nashville. So glad to be here.
And Gabe, how did you hear about the call?
Well, from the Monday call, if that counts. So I usually go to the Monday one.
Well, it's good to see you here, Gabe. And could you tell us a little bit more about just what sort of crisis foster care your organization does and what gets you excited about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so we have it really open to any situation. It's a lot of loss of housing or hospitalization, and increasingly more domestic violence and addiction treatment. So we foster dogs and cats to get them back to their owners after the crisis. And for me, I say that we are a people organization pretending to be a pet organization. So that's what gets me excited, is knowing that we're helping families.
Well, I would say, Gabe, if that's the case, you're in very good company, because as we talk about the future of animal sheltering, the human-animal bond is absolutely at the core of that. So good to see you here, Gabe.
Thanks.
All right, folks, I'd love to have one more person introduce themselves before. And also, it looks like Tracy in the chat said that they have a very similar mission, Gabe. So I would definitely connect with Tracy about the amazing work they're doing in Washington.
Hi, Bobby.
Hey.
Hi, so my name's Sarah. I've been on the last few calls, but haven't actually said hi. I'm the shelter manager at a very small no-kill shelter in Western Pennsylvania. 5 years ago, they went from high kill to no kill. So it's an interesting growing pain.
And Sarah, what gets you excited about the work, and how did you hear about the call?
So I heard about the call, I think just from some of the email threads and different resources I have bookmarked for when I need help. And then what was the other question? What gets me excited about animal welfare?
Yeah.
Just being an advocate for the animals. Our shelter is in a very, very low income BIPOC community. So we are focusing 2022 on community outreach.
I love it. And if I can, I guess, give you one tip, one of the best resources that I've had access to during Black History Month have been all of the calls by CARE this month. Every Wednesday afternoon, they've been hosting calls. They just did an amazing call yesterday with Maddie's fund. I'm sure Allison will drop that into the chat. It's a great place just to get great information from a great organization. So speaking of getting some information and some motivation, good morning, everyone. My name is Bobby Mann. It is 8:05 Pacific Standard Time where I am at. I'm the Maddie's Human Animal Support Services Pilot Director. So honored to be co-hosting this call today with Allison, Mary, and the rest of the team from Maddie's Fund. And to get us kicked off, I'm going to toss it over to Mary Smith for a little bit of motivation.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Allison. Hey, you guys, I don't know if you saw the news yesterday, but a shelter worker was killed yesterday and another woman was injured trying to save her in Oakland Park, Florida. It's a rescue group called 100 plus abandoned dogs of the Everglades, Florida. They have a facility and they were working with one of the dogs and something happened. And the woman's partner, just a few hours after the death of this woman, said that, at least this is what the woman, she loved doing this. And, it's a tragedy. And I think we should just hold her in our hearts today as we go about the work that we're doing. We all know the potential for these things to happen. And when they do, we always try to look and figure out the why. Sometimes we just don't know what the why is. But again, this is sort of that part of the work that we do that, sits on our shoulder. So her name is Pam. And let's just think about, like I said, hold her in your heart today. So there's a link to the article at the beginning of the chat file if you guys want to see more, and you will probably see more. And we know the kinds of headlines that will come out of it, but I think we just keep putting one foot in front of the other and try to do the best we can. And Allison was really nice to put in a link to the Big Dog Master Class that a whole lot of people are coming together to talk about big dogs, what we can do, what do we need to do, how do we keep the community safe, how do we keep our employees safe, how do we keep dogs safe, what does that look like? And I think it's all very, very timely. So The grants team knows me so well, they have given me a script because they know how most of the time off script is sort of my middle name. So oh, it would have been good if I'd found it. Okay. Every month, Maddie's Fund will be giving away $5,000 to listeners of this call. There may be 5 $1,000 prizes, maybe 2 2,500 prizes, maybe even just one $5,000 prize. You can and should enter to win each weekly call you attend live or watch the replay of. Every individual who watches should enter. And you register to attend the calls, and then you enter to win the grant prizes. So if you don't leave money on the table, participate. This is the same thing that happens on Monday and happens on Friday. So you have a chance to, add a little bit more to the fundraising that all of you are so hard at work at. Now, speaking of fundraising, many of you may be aware of the fact that on Monday, we announced a new funding opportunity. Maddie's Fund has set aside $1 million to provide operating grants to organizations led by BIPOC individuals. That's Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Well, you may be surprised. We received a lot of emails from people who were complaining about what we were doing. Shocking, isn't it? Just shocking. They felt that we were discriminating, that times are tough. Money should be made available to everyone. I have to tell you, I have a pretty amazing grants team. They responded to each and every one of those and thanked people for sharing their points of view with us and offered them some other opportunities and resources. But I also have to tell you, we received quite a few emails from people that thanked us for seeing them. Think about that. These aren't organizations that are just going to form tomorrow. These are organizations and people who have been doing this work as long as we have. But they don't feel seen. They don't feel included. They don't feel like they have a space to belong. This past month, I've had the complete pleasure of listening to the series of webcasts that CARE, Companions and Animals for Reform and Equity, have been putting on. Wednesday, there was a webcast on proximate leaders. All those people have been doing this work for as long as we have. Many of them didn't even know that there was a movement to support them. It didn't really matter to them. They love animals. They want to help animals. They want to be that person in their neighborhood that can be a support for others in their neighborhood. And you know why they never even knew that possibly there was a movement to support them? Because we're a movement that doesn't look like too many other people out there. It looks a lot like me. So just to put your fears at rest, I think in 28 years, Maddie's Fund has spent, oh, help me here, Shelley. I'm just going to pull a number out of my ass as I always do. Let's say $282 million.
Close enough. Works for
Right
me.
on, sister. And most of that money has gone to organizations that are run by people that look like all of us. It's gone to universities, it's gone to veterinary practices, it's gone to rescue groups, it's gone to animal control, it's gone to private shelters, dogs and cats, spay, neuter, adoptions, foster, you name it, we've supported it. Now, we want to be able to recognize and honor more people into our movement. And we're doing that by making these grants available. So you're always welcome to share your opinions with us. We welcome those. But chances are I'm going to respond right back. So have a great weekend, have Monday off, and we'll come back and do this again next Friday. I'm out. Thanks.
Shout out to Mary Smith and Maddie's Fund. Thank you so much for just being really intentional about your actions. And, you know, folks, like if y'all are vibing with this and you feel like this is an awesome thing, regardless of the criticism that's been out there, I see a lot of you on screen. Let's give a round of applause to Maddie's, right? This is a great thing. And I think To all of you as a BIPOC person, I get to attend these calls, and the best and biggest part of all of this is building community for me. And I think the one thing is, in the word community, there's also the word unity. And I think as we stick together in this movement and move forward, it's a beautiful thing. And one of the things I wanted to do before we open this up to national updates is, so many relationships have been built in this virtual world, and so many bonds have been built with the center of the human animal bond in place, right? We all look different. We all are from different places of life, but we have that one thing that brings us together. So I'm going to ask all of you in the chat, drop the name of a person, maybe on this call or outside of this call, that you have built a relationship with that you've never met in real life. I'm going to start. I met an amazing leader, Jennifer Jenkins, amazing African-American woman that is doing amazing work. The link I just put in the chat is a YouTube video of her life story. If y'all have 15 minutes, I highly encourage you to watch it. Look at that. Met Gabe. I love it. Kathy Duncan. That's another person. Mary. Yep. Oh, I got a shout out. Thank you, Andrea. Sterling Davis, Trap King. Look at this, Dr. J. Look at all these people we've never met. So many, right, Allison? So as we move forward, I just want to remind all of us, as the world is opening back up and we see each other in real life and actually find out how tall we all are in real life, that these relationships were built in a virtual world. And it's because of the things that we value and love the most, and not about what we look like. So let's continue to be intentional and continue to lead with love. And I'm going to open up the floor for national updates.
Hey, Bobby, it's Chelsea at Petco Love. I'll jump in. Can y'all hear me okay? My internet has been a little spotty.
Loud and clear, sister.
Okay, awesome. So as you guys know, we are gearing up for National Pet Vaccination Month as part of our commitment to distribute 1 million free vaccines to family pets. To date, we've ordered 463,000 vaccines. Huge shout out to Miami-Dade. They are leading the charts at 22,700 doses administered since August. And we are going into March, which is what we're going to call National Pet Vaccination Month. We have a goal in March of having 400 organizations administering vaccines across the country. And we're trying to do 400,000 vaccines in March alone. Today, we have 370 orgs signed up to participate. So we only have 30 to go to meet our goal, but our orders are a little lower on vaccines. So we're pacing at about 250,000 vaccines for March. So if your organizations are not involved, it is not too late. We'd love to get you guys some free vaccines to administer to family pets in your communities.
Thanks, Chelsea. I want to be able to be in a place where I got so much money to give away that I could just make up my own national months like y'all do.
It's a cool gig. I won't lie. It's a cool gig.
All right, let's keep it rolling.
Hey there, I'll go next if I can. I'm Hillary from HSUS. Hi, everybody. Wanted to remind you, I think Lindsay was here last week to tell everybody about the trauma-informed care workshops we have that we're going to be offering on March 15th. I'm going to put the link in the chat, but the session, there are two different sessions. One is sort of understanding what trauma-informed care looks like and how it affects organizations internally. And then the second session is going to be focused more on our external and community engagement work. We already have over 600 people registered. So this topic clearly hits a nerve with folks, but we welcome all of you to attend. We think it's going to be a really great session. And that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thanks, Hillary. And I believe y'all are still looking for people to sign up for roundtables too, right? At the actual expo?
Yes, and I can email. I can put Krista Rakovan's email address in the chat here so that people can reach out to her. She's taking care of that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Stacy's here with the Community Cats podcast. Just wanted to do a shout out that we have the United Spay Alliance online conference coming up a week from this weekend. We have like over 20 presenters. It's all about spay neuter. It starts Friday night, goes through Sunday, and it's a deep dive about just all the different kinds of spay neuter programs, how we can improve efficiencies in our clinics, what our challenges are, what our struggles are, what's happening around the world. We have a couple of panels on spay neuter programs outside of the United States. We have large clinic, small clinic analysis. So pretty much you name it, we got it. And I'll put the Community Cats podcast website in the chat, and you can go there and find out all tons of information there. The next week, we have our trapper certification workshop, which is a trapper training for 2.5 hours for folks that are new to TNR and want to learn how to do it appropriately and safely. And lastly, it's Feline Fix by 5 month. And so we have like a swag box of all these different Feline Fix by 5 graphics. And I will put an example in the chat as well as a link to the graphical swag. So we want to promote Feline Fix by 5 this month.
Thanks, Stacy. And shout out to Stacy LeBrun. For those folks that don't know, Stacy was actually one of the first folks that helped create agendas for the Monday and some of the Friday calls. So thank you for helping these communities be built.
Hey, good morning, Ed Jameson, representing NACA this morning. And we actually, NACA really doesn't have anything to update other than if you're going to be at Carolina Unites next week, definitely stop by our booth and say hi. I do want to take a quick second with this time and really thank Maddie's Fund for being bold on the initiative with BIPOC leadership. I know many of you on this call, and most of you know that I didn't talk about my race very much until about 2 years ago. You're not the only one who gets backlash, Maddie. Believe it or not, I have family members who don't want me to talk about my race since I've been talking about my race. So this is a really difficult time, and the fact that you are being bold and literally putting your money where your mouth is, as you always do, is greatly appreciated.
Holy Ed Jameson, speaking of NACA, I thought I was not gonna ever see you back on these national calls after you got a new job. Tell people where you are now.
Now my COO is on the calls, Kelly Furness, on all the time. But yeah, at Operation Kindness nonprofit shelter just north of the city of Dallas. We are really working hard, trying to be the kind of flip the script on how many nonprofits have worked in the sheltering world, taking tons of hard animals. We tell everybody, if you're north of Waco and you have a sick animal that you used to send to Austin Pets Alive, you should be calling us first and driving those animals north as opposed to heading south. And we're just trying to flip the script. Really proud of the team. We had a pretty amazing year in these difficult times, and the team is rocking it.
Thanks, Ed. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to throw another dog dad joke out there. So
always great seeing you guys.
All right, let's keep it rolling. We got a little bit more time if anybody else would like to go.
Hey, Bobby, this is Brent from Best Friends. I wanted to highlight something that came out yesterday. Actually, it was last week on the Best Friends podcast, and it was Julie Castle talking about a new initiative we rolled out at Best Friends regarding pay for all of our staff. And it really gets into a lot of the challenges that we have when we're underpaying staff and the poverty mindset that creates, and knowing how hard the industry is working right now to keep and maintain staffing levels, I think is really a valuable conversation that I think everybody can benefit from listening to. I know that not everybody's in the same situation that Best Friends is in terms of their ability to control pay scale and that sort of thing, but I think there's a lot of thought-provoking stuff in there. So John just posted it in the chat, and I hope you all will check it out.
Thanks, Brent. I also want to give another shout out to an amazing BIPOC leader, Jose Oscaño, who's been doing amazing cultural work at Best Friends. And the one other soapbox thing I will say is, as we are being intentional by making more diversity in our organizations, we also want to be mindful of the positions that we're putting people in. Oftentimes, and we're going to be talking about customer service very shortly, and that frontline staff and back-end animal care often have some of the most trauma and harm involved. And when we're talking about people walking to these positions, especially BIPOC positions, we want to make sure that we're also giving folks an opportunity to see the positives, the adoptions, the community work, the successes, because I had those opportunities, and 12 years later, I'm still here doing the work. And that's because I've had amazing leaders that have helped me see all the beauty in this animal welfare community. So anyone else?
I just wanted to jump in really quickly on behalf of Humane Animal Support Services. Katie is going to be showcasing one of the a really great resource that we are putting out. And I just wanted to remind everybody, because there are so many people on this call now, about our pro resources and the toolkits and the resources that are available. There are over 350 resources now within our pro resources. So I just want to drive everybody there to just dig in and see kind of best practices, what your the other folks on this call are doing, sharing success stories, et cetera, et cetera.
Thanks, Jamie Case. All right, well, we're going to keep this thing moving because we have two amazing presentations still left and not a lot of time. I want to give a shout out to Sharon Harmon and Brian August I see on this call as well, because I've been a big fan of the work that's been going on in Oregon, but I was blown away when I had a chance to meet with Kelly to hear about the work that they're doing to incorporate veterinary social workers. So Kelly, over to you.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. And also my thanks to OHS leadership who's on the call, including Dr. Steve Kachis, who was really instrumental in getting my internship done at the Oregon Humane Society as well. So hello to everyone on the call. My name's Kelly Bremken. I have about 15 years experience in animal welfare, everything from foster care coordinator, adoptions counselor, volunteer manager. And then at some point I decided, boy, I really love people as much as I love pets. And so I went back to school and I've graduated from University of Tennessee with my master's in social work. And I also got certified for veterinary social work. There are lots of different types of social work in the world. People who work at schools, people who work for medical, and then the certification for veterinary social work is really this intersection of pets and people. So during my final year of my master's, I had to do an extra internship, which landed me at the Oregon Humane Society, thankfully. And then also I had to complete some additional classes on pet loss and grief, and all of the things that go with the human-animal bond. Also, I walked this dog. I have a tiny little French bulldog. I walked him for like 1.5 miles this morning, and instead of making him tired, somehow I just jazzed him up. So you got to hear a lot of squeaking happening. So when we talk about veterinary social work, I want to highlight some of the things that I'm able to do at the Oregon Humane Society, but I also want to talk to you guys about what sort of return on investment you're getting with a veterinary social worker and how to access one if you can't afford to have one with you. I'd like to say that we're magical unicorns out in the world and there's very few of us, but there's more and more all the time. And lots of places are accessing social workers in their area to talk about the human-animal bond, not just having one on staff. So I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that Bobby's passion might be dad jokes, but also pets. Everyone's passion is pets. So pets are attached to people, and that can get rather messy. I can hear in Gabe's work and in Ed's work, we're talking about that human-animal bond and the preservation of that. I'm fortunate to be at an animal shelter because pets come in from a person, they get adopted by a person, and while they're in our care, we're their person. And I think that's how many of us feel. So the work that I get to do is both client facing. I get to work with people in the community who are looking for the resources that y'all are providing. They're looking for a pet food bank. They're looking for access to low cost vet care. They're looking for ways to find appropriate housing. So I get to help our staff be the link between those. So offering those community resources. It also means that I get the chance to go out into our community and talk to our social service partners. I get a chance to go to those domestic violence people shelters and talk to them about, are you including animals in your assessment? When you're speaking to people experiencing homelessness, what are you giving them as their option for keeping their pet with them? So those are the great things I get to do with social services and helping with community resources. The best news about veterinary social work is it's not really that far out there. You guys are all doing a lot of this work. Many of you are working with community engagement teams. You have resource lists that are downloadable from your website. Like Hillary's presentation that's going to happen, you guys are doing trauma-informed languages. You're working on best practices for trauma-informed practice. So a veterinary social worker, I like to think of it as just this next step in keeping people and pets together, because we want to address all those human issues that are going to impact the pet. And that's where I come in with a little bit more knowledge of social services and mental health referrals and community engagement. So lots of veterinary social workers work in general vet clinics, emergency clinics, specialty clinics, some work academically. And then I feel super excited to be in an animal shelter because there's only a handful of us. And I really am excited that OHS sees the value in that. And we talk about all the time, what metrics are we using? How are we measuring our success? And just like everyone else on this call, I track enough data to really slow things down. One of the things I joke about is if I only also track how much data I track on the sheet, I feel like that's sometimes the biggest part of the pie of my day. So one of the things I want to tell people is, yes, we track everything. We know what my average caseload is between 12 and 15 clients that I'm helping at any given time. We know what I'm working with, what on my list turns into a surrender, and what on my list turns into keeping a pet and a person together. But we're equally as interested in that qualitative data, staff debriefings, learning with a pre and post survey, what I'm available to give to staff and what they're available to learn from me, helping on the work-life balance, updating all the resources for our clients, especially after things like euthanasia, or if it's a very difficult surrender. So those are the types of things that we work with and that we can measure, but I also love to hear the staff stories about what's happening for them. Because while I'm helping clients and I'm helping social service agencies, I'm also help promote a really great wellness culture at the Oregon Humane Society. Part of my job is being there for staff so that they can just stop in and talk to me and debrief about the day. I have a lot of examples of times where staff's able to come to me and say, this was a difficult client I worked with today. Here's what's weighing heavy on my heart. I read an article about someone who was injured or killed in a rescue. Those things weigh heavy on us. Like Mary said, it was a great way to say it sits on our heart. And so to be able to do this work and be able to give what we have to it, it's nice to be able to know that the place where you work is really invested in your wellness. And I think that's something that I offer for the Oregon Humane Society, a chance for staff to debrief with me. We also meet twice monthly in group sessions with an outside counseling firm and do topics of discussion for mental health, stress management, compassion fatigue, tapping, breathing techniques, anything we can bring to the table to say, we care about you, we care about this work, we know we have to help you show up the best you can. So I would love to know if anybody has any questions about what it is I do, examples of the work, or hiring your own veterinary social worker. I see in the chat somebody saying, how do you track your data? Smartsheet, it went from Excel to Google to Smartsheet. I think Smartsheet and Google Documents are the easiest for us to be able to track because it also on the back end helps us do reporting and get a good handle on the numbers. And also, I certainly believe in leveraging things. And so my first job was to reach out to a ton of other social workers and say, hi, how do you track this? How do you track your touches? How do you track who you're talking to and how long it's taking you? And so there were some really great people out in the world who were very, really nice to me and gave me some examples of tracking. And then we just modified it to make our own. Someone asked me, what are some of the criteria I use to identify the right volunteers to achieve the mission? Boy, that is a huge question, and we are still working on that. Always a work in progress. I'm really excited that Oregon Humane Society is going to open their community hospital. And so part of that is a community resource center. It turns out many of our volunteers, I mean, you're not surprised, you know this, many of the volunteers that you have are either medical professionals or mental health professionals already. So letting them lend their service by helping us work on language, answering phone calls, and those sort of things. But it is really important to also be sure we're supporting them and also talking about cultural competency. I think it's something that Mary touched on when you talked about the scholarships for BIPOC. We want to be really direct and intentional with the way that we support our volunteers and the way that we support the community that we work in. For example, if our team is going to go out to tribal land, we want to give them a quick heads up before we go of some of the things that we may come in contact with, as well as the appropriate language to use and the things we might want to say and might want to avoid. So cultural competency is really important for that.
Hey, Kelly, I really want to just slow this down a little bit and just try to take in just all of this amazing information. I know that you're going to be sharing resources in a little bit, and we want to give people an opportunity to ask more questions. But could you also, because you are all with over 200 animal welfare professionals that probably have never had access to talk to a veterinary social worker for their own self-care. So like, could you walk us through a simple exercise that you might do with staff to just really help build that community?
Absolutely. So one of my favorite things to talk about is it's really important to do things like know what restorative practices give you life. Every single one of us has something in our life that gives us a spark outside of work. So one of the things I talk about is you are more than this job. Even if this job is very important to you and is your whole heart, you are a complete person out in the world, which means animal rescue, animal welfare is a part of what you do. It's not the only thing you're recognized for, the only reason you're important in life. And so I want people to know that. One of the most important things we talk about is having a closing ritual when you leave work for the day. Some people on this call are fortunate to say, I clock out at 5. And some people are fortunate to say, I'm available whenever anybody needs me. That's a very hard thing to say. So I like to tell people that there's a closing ritual for every single one of us. And you might already be doing something like this. When you are done for the day, when you are done for the week, when you're going to lunch, when you're going to be away from the desk where you're not thinking about what you're doing for an hour, is there something that you can do every single time to remind your body and your mind that I'm shutting off from today? So for me, highly embarrassing, however, I like to put on lavender hand sanitizer because I care about smell. Although I think my nose is so burned from working at an animal shelter, I'm not even sure I smell it anymore. But I put on lavender hand sanitizer when I am done for the day, whether I'm at home, whether I'm in my car leaving the shelter, whether I'm leaving an event. And then no matter how long I'm in the car or wherever I am, I play Taylor Swift Shake It Off just because it happened to come on while I was trying to figure out my ritual. Also, I am a Swiftie, so I'm not going to lie. But I literally put on the hand sanitizer, listen to whatever part of that song I have at that moment, and I literally shake my hands and dance around just a small bit. Just a small bit. I mean, enough to be embarrassing if you're next to me in the car.
Kelly, I am also a Swiftie. So this is an amazing bonding experience with you. I'd love to hear from other folks. Like, it sounds like, let's see, Aaron Greenwood mentioned something. Sarah Aguilar, do you want to mention sort of what your closing ritual might be?
Oh my gosh, thank you. No, my drive home is usually full of like loud singing though.
I love that and I appreciate that.
I love somebody in the chat said that they organize their desk because it closes work. One of the things that I like to tell people is we all check stuff off during the day. And at the end of the day, we're getting a to-do list for the next day. We all do that, right? Here's the 4 things I need to do tomorrow morning really quickly when I get in. Don't forget to call her. Don't forget to call him. But what if you added 2 things to the list of things that you got done today? What if I said, these are my to-done things today. These are 2 things I kicked ass at today. I killed this. Awesome. I was amazing at this. And so adding that into your closing ritual or getting prepared for the next day is a way to remind you that we may have done some hard shit today and it might not have always gone our way, but we probably at least rocked 1 or 2 things. And it's also a good mental health practice to be looking for those things to help you be resilient.
Thanks, Kelly. I want to dive into another question about unpacking, right? So I think the goal always is to create space and create safe spaces for people to share how they're feeling. But I think there's sometimes a fear, right? Where if we create that space, we're going to bite off more than we can chew. And oftentimes you're going to hear a lot of people's dissatisfactions or grievances. So how do you deal with that situation of opening that door, but still being able to handle all of that?
So the role for veterinary social work at the Oregon Humane Society is we do some staff counseling. So it's just really coaching sessions. If you want to come in and debrief, and it is an actual, I do have to tell staff, hey, venting is something you do to your friends. Coming in and asking for help on a situation is what we're doing here. So the thing that's important is if it's me and I am looking to vent or looking to get advice for something, if I'm the person that someone's talking to, my first thing is to say, hey, what's the intent here? Bobby, you're coming to me this afternoon and you're bitching about the policy that just got instituted for admissions. Are you looking for solutions and asking me to help you, or do you just need to get some shit off your chest? So being able to set that up ahead of time so that I know as someone you're talking to what you expect from me. And also as a person who's saying these things, maybe I don't want you to interrupt me and tell me that you can help me. Maybe I just want you to listen. So I think intent and impact are very important to think about. And I always refer, for myself, I saw somebody in the chat say, how do you take care of yourself? I do the things that really revitalize me that I know with intention when I do them, they make me feel better. And one of those is going to a mental health therapist myself and making that a very normal thing to talk about at the animal shelter. Saying, I can't meet you guys for drinks on Monday because I have therapy at 5 o'clock on Mondays. So being able to be honest and share about that is something that I think is super important as well. And just knowing that there is someone at the shelter who, if you needed to be referred to mental health, if you wanted to come in and talk about de-escalation strategies, those things are available to you because we care about your wellness.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I would say when I was going through emotional support CPR training and wanting to provide resources for staff, I myself started seeing someone, and it was the best thing that I'd ever done, and currently is also helping me with my sobriety. So just every day is trying to be intentional and work on it. So Kelly, this is amazing. So it looks like there's a question from Kimberly about techniques to help people open up. Could you share about that?
Yeah, so we, in group settings especially, well, let's talk about it in two ways. Individually, getting people to open up is tough because what I really need is for them to see me as one of them and to trust me. What I feel very fortunate about is that I have a long history of working in an animal shelter. And I think that somehow that gives me a little bit of street cred with the staff. I can walk up when their arms covered in something wet and go, did you smell it? Is that urine? Is it pee or is it water? Like playing that game with them and just knowing what they're going through, I think is super beneficial. Looking across the table and seeing a spark of recognition that someone understands what I'm talking about when I'm saying, I had to euthanize neonatal kittens today that were very sick. I know what that's like. So I think there is, excuse me, a benefit to having someone who's worked in animal welfare before or been around that as a volunteer as your veterinary social worker. However, in a group setting, we try to do the things that you do in any group. We're trying to get to know each other. We're playing silly games. We're playing Would You Rather. We're playing I choose this over this. And we're just trying to get you to open up. Because one of the things that's very difficult is it is really messy work. Like Bobby said, we're talking about our feelings, which in animal welfare, let's be honest, we've usually been like, I'm going to shove that back there and not look at it for now. And so I am asking people to be vulnerable with me. And so that takes time and trust. And so I feel super fortunate at a place that's going to allow me to give people the space to start to trust me.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Bobby, I'm going to jump in. This is Dr. Steve Kachis. I can't express how grateful I am and we are at OHS to have Kelly and have this resource. I just wanted to give just a very quick perspective as a veterinarian, or, it applies across all animal welfare folks, anybody who's caring for another living thing. I went to school to become a veterinarian, to practice veterinary medicine. And when I think about the number of cases that Kelly deals with at any one time, 12 to 15 doesn't seem like a lot, especially for an organization like us, where we might have, 12,000 adoptions in a year. But those are the 12 to 15 cases that are the most gut wrenching at times, or the most challenging for a variety of reasons. Clients come in with not just a pet, but all of their own emotional baggage. And I was not trained to deal with that. And so just taking that small little tiny caseload, or having a resource for backup for that, is life-changing for veterinary professionals that, have a backup that they can actually then focus on what they went to school for, which is getting the pet better, and have somebody else come in and help with the person that owns the animal. She said that, that we're the owner of the pet when they're in our care, but you also have to care for the people caring for the pets. And so it's just been hugely beneficial to have this resource.
Dr. K, thanks for jumping in. And for how long have we all been going to our organizations or talking to people? We're like, I wear all the hats, right? We're like, that's not cool. We shouldn't have to wear all the hats. Like, we should have a veterinarian, and we should have a veterinary social worker, and we should have frontline staff, and we should have animal care staff, because that's what makes a championship team, right? Not just one person doing all the work. Kelly, I know that we have a little bit of time left, and I didn't want to lose a chance for you to share any other resources that you would want to share with the group before.
Sure. So I feel fortunate that University of Tennessee's certification program was really good to me. And so I can drop their website in the chat, because they not only have some resources for you on how to find a veterinary social worker in your area, but also if you're interested in just finding someone in your area who might be able to support people in need. And so let's see, see if that will work. Oops. So what I'm dropping in the chat is a few resources for UT's website, because they not only have things for your organization to look at, how do I utilize veterinary social work or access a veterinary social worker who might be in my area, but also where do I refer people who need this service, but I'm a place that doesn't have this service at this time. So I think that's important to know. And then I also think that It's important to know who's out in the field and who's doing the work. Your community resource and engagement managers, they're seeing this on a regular basis. So checking in with them to figure out what are the gaps in the needs that you have, what are the gaps in service for you, not only for what you're providing clients, but what are the gaps in service that you need to provide for your own staff. So doing things like wellness fairs, bringing in outside counseling firms during really hard times or large rescue cases for debriefings, those are things that should be accessible to most places. I'm also going to put my email in the chat because I am very excited to just be able to talk to people about this endeavor. And then I think there's some upcoming things that are really exciting. I think there are groups who are doing like the trauma-informed care workshop, as well as if you've got EAP for staff, as well as if you've got a wellness committee for things to look into. I think that I'm really excited to say that Dr. Lauren Overman, who I think is on the call, who's amazing, from Humane Society for Southwest Washington, her and I are going to be doing a presentation at Expo in April about veterinary social work. I would love for y'all to attend, especially because it's like Friday afternoon, the last one of the day. So we'd love to see people there. And it would be wonderful to be able to talk to you about some examples of what's going on in other communities, how they're not quite maybe using a veterinary social worker, but are on their way, and what are the incremental changes you can make.
And Kelly, I know that you were also doing some work in the HOS working group with the external facing medical care. Would you mind just touching on that briefly before we move on?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that because it's basically a toolkit for how to integrate veterinary social work into your environment. So part of that group has been meeting and looking at what are the roles of veterinary social work, where are the ways that we can help during that kind of flow for an animal at your shelter. What are the ways that we can help in medical? What are the ways we can help in the community? So that toolkit will be ready. We think in March. It's just going through final, and then it'll be on the website and available. We're very excited, and we worked very hard on that. Thank you for bringing it up.
Of course, Kelly, it's going to be one of our resources of the week in the future. But Kelly, thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge and experience. Thank you to Oregon Humane for creating these sorts of opportunities, and hope to see you on many more of these calls.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. We are going to move over to a conversation all about policy. As we talk about removing barriers to not only life-saving, but honoring the human-animal bond, it's typically legislation and policies that are creating the biggest barriers and often some of the biggest ones to tackle. But our amazing Katie Jarl, who is one of my brilliant colleagues, is going to lead a conversation with a group of folks that have been creating some great resources to help you along the way.
Thanks, Bobby. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy Friday. I hope everyone can hear me okay. And thank you so much, Kelly. That was such a wonderful presentation. So excited to have you here today. As Bobby said, I'm with American Pets Alive. I am our Director of Government Affairs and Policy, and I also chair the HOS Government and Policy Communications Working Group. We are a small but mighty team that has been working for the last 6 months to create a resource for all of you to just help demystify the policy engagement process. I want to first start off by thanking our members that some of them are here today that you're going to hear from: Jessica Simpson and Lauren Loney from the Humane Society of the United States, Emily Hovermail from Humane Rescue Alliance, and David Smith from No Kill Colorado, and then my colleague at American Pets Alive, Hillary Shurtleff. That is your HOS government communications policy team. And we have been working really hard to make this toolkit something that feels accessible to everyone. We started off this process about 6 months ago by inviting a small group of former and present shelter directors to come to a roundtable discussion with us to talk to us about what they, felt was most overwhelming and, was keeping them from their full engagement on policy issues in their state. And, I'm going to say something that Mary said earlier for those of you that were on the call from the very beginning. One of my favorite quotes is from former governor of Texas, Ann Richards. And she used to say often that if you are not at the table, you are probably on the menu. And that is very true in policy conversations. Oftentimes we hear from shelter directors that a bill has been introduced, it has passed a committee, it has maybe even passed an entire chamber before they are aware of what's going on and what their state legislature is trying to do that impacts their work. And so we want to help you get ahead of all of that, be prepared before a legislative session even starts, and really make this process as simple as possible. So even those shelters that do not have someone on staff that works on government and policy issues, this toolkit is meant to be a resource that you can open up, really read through some of the basics, the top level information. And then we're going to share a resource that is the first of its kind when it comes to animal welfare work at the end. And I'm really excited to unveil that for you today. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Jessica Simpson from the Humane Society of the United States to give you an overview of our toolkit.
Thank you, Katie. So I'm going to try sharing my screen. All right, so hopefully everyone can see that. And I'll just go over our table of contents and touch on an overview of each section. So our table of contents has each section linked. So if you're interested in one section in particular, you can just hover over that area and click the hyperlink that appears, and it'll take you straight there. So for example, the rules for legislative engagement. The first item we address is about how to engage in your state or local legislative process. We address the differences and considerations for municipal shelters versus private 501c3s and discuss the distinctions between legislative lobbying and advocating on an issue. So for example, lobbying is typically when you're engaging on a specific piece of legislation, whereas advocating is engaging on an issue more generally. We use an example in here talking about if you're speaking with your legislator about the need for more spay and neuter resources in your county, that would be an example of advocating, versus if you're talking to your legislator in support of House Bill 1111, that would be considered lobbying. So we also include a glossary of terms that are related to lobbying and a link to a great resource on lobbying strategy. In the next section, we dive into the legislative process. In this section, we discuss the importance of perseverance and setting reasonable expectations. And then we break that down into the basics. So when you start engaging about how to find out which dates are important for your state's legislative sessions, building out a timeline, we note the significance of doing research on an issue and on its history in your region, on possible stakeholders, and about strategy, both offensive and defensive. So we'll lay out what considerations you should make and the kind of plan for your strategy, talk about draft legislation and building support for your bill. The toolkit also highlights how to learn about bills that may affect your work. So even if you aren't interested in introducing legislation, you can stay vigilant about being considered in your state and decide what your organization would like to engage on, either in support or in opposition to some kind of legislation. We've included lots of different resources, as Katie noted, including a more in-depth explanation of the state's legislative sessions and a map with all those resources, and those are linked state by state. And then we also go into a legislative chart with session dates and hyperlinks to each state's legislative website, as well as a bill tracking chart for legislation related to animal issues, which Emily is going to dive into a bit more. If I can find it, sorry. Get my notes differently. So that information is all in this beginning section here. As I mentioned, that map, you can click on that link here and it'll take you to this great resource, which it breaks down that state by state information and sends you to either a state legislative website as well as a bill tracking tool on it. And it does it for every state, so it's exciting. And then we start talking about connecting with legislators. Section 4, here we go. So in this section, we discuss the who, when, what, and how, including tips about relationship building and best practices on engaging with legislators. Things like keeping them in the loop on the great work that your organization is doing in their community and getting to know their staff, and learning about how to make concise and convincing pitches about key issues. We also talk about both in-session timing and interim work that you should be considering in your strategy building. Finally, there's a section on testimony. So that's an important part of the advocacy and lobbying work. We talk about the process to submit testimony and the types of materials that you should prepare to share with legislators and advocates, as well as offer some great sample documents for your reference. And some great tips about do's and don'ts for testifying, things that'll be helpful as you prepare. And then finally, we also have additional resources at the bottom, which includes links to information about so you can learn about different kinds of jargon and additional resources that might be helpful in this journey. So I know that was a lot, but I want to pass it off to Emily to show you how to use some of these great resources. So I'll take it to her.
Okay. Thanks, Jess. So now I will take over trying to do the screen share here. Okay, sorry about that. I think we've got it. So as just mentioned, this section here is referencing the different state tracking websites. It has a link that we can go directly to a list that includes all of the legislative sessions for the different states. You can go to the official legislative website here for those states. And then also what we have gone ahead and done is create these tracking charts for each of the states already populated with information about the animal related bills that are being considered during these sessions. So you can see some, I just pulled up Florida as an example. The Florida, I'm having trouble now moving it, sorry. You all can see my screen, right? Okay, I think I'm stuck in the Zoom and not moving the screen correctly. Sorry.
It looks good from this end, Emily.
Okay, I think I had you all where I can see you over the scrolling bar, and I'm just being silly. So you can see there are a lot of different bills, many of which probably you wouldn't have necessarily engaged on, but just you may have interest in. All of the animal related bills. It gives you kind of a good context of everything that's being considered in the legislature, kind of puts some more context to all the animal related bills. There's pet store sales related things related to tethering. One thing that I think is pretty interesting here, and it goes along with all of the conversation about the human animal bonds and the work on that, is you can see this legislation here, Senate Bill 614, which has had some action. The nice thing about the chart here as well is we've described what the current action is. So there's been a couple of committee favorable reports for this bill. You might look at this and not have necessarily entirely understand what this bill is about, but we link directly to the bill language here as well. So you can see, okay, this is about dangerous dogs. What is it? What does that mean? What is it about? We can find out from the legislative website that, okay, this is actually a huge bill that requires public housing authorities to not take breed into consideration when determining any considerations around dangerous dogs, and also removes a grandfathering provision that allows local governments to enforce dog breed specific regulations. So this is a huge bill. It's very exciting actually that it's gotten out of a couple of committees, and obviously is a great tool for ensuring the connections of the human animal bond and keeping people in family, keeping pets with their families. Similarly, I think that the helpful thing about having all of these different bills and the tracking information is it can help you kind of see the trends that are going on across the country. And you'll see that this is a fairly big trend, which is exciting. All of the work that's being done to keep pets and people together. There's legislation here in Maryland as well that has had a hearing now, but hasn't been voted on yet, an income tax credit for pet-friendly rental dwelling units. So this is, again, we can look at the bill language, we can find out more about where things are in the process. watch the actual hearings. All of this is all linked within the toolkit and within the bill tracking component specifically. So this bill would create a tax credit for an income tax credit for rental dwelling units where they support pet inclusive housing, and specifically housing that does not require breed or weight limits, and also does not have any non-refundable pet fees. So I wanted to highlight this bill because I think it's a really great example of how shelters can be a huge part of the conversation in terms of legislation, because this bill came about because of the Professional Animal Workers of Maryland, because of the Maryland Federation of Animal Care and Control and Shelter Organizations. And it's moving through the process. It's an important bill, and being a part of this conversation and being a part of the political process is how you make sure, yes, you have a seat at the table and you're taking your fill, you know, you're getting your portion too. So that's kind of what we're hoping that we can support by having all of this here and making this really accessible with the tracking documents. And I see that we just have a couple of minutes left, so I will stop sharing if I can figure out how.
How are you?
Well, Emily, that was incredible. Thank you so much. And Jess, I really appreciate y'all running through that. I know it looks like a lot. We have tried to really simplify it. If you do open the chart, like Jess said, the table of contents, you can go piece by piece. I've seen a couple of questions in here about the bill tracking. And as I mentioned before, there are a few of us on this working group. Hillary from our team is doing the lion's share of all of this bill tracking. We do use Politico Pro, which is a platform where we search for specific keywords. But if there are any other bills that you see in your state that aren't reflected on this list, just shoot us an email. We're happy to add any additional bills to that list, and we're always trying to expand it. We're updating it with our volunteers and trying to on a weekly basis, so that every week the most updated action is reflected in these bill charts, so that you can stay on top of everything happening in your state. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's also a plug. If you are interested in this kind of work and you are passionate about government and policy the way that we are, we would love to have you join our working group and help us with this ongoing project. Now that legislative sessions have started all over the country, a lot of what we're going to be doing moving forward in our working group is not only keeping this toolkit up to date, but also diving into some really specific and interesting policy conversations about bills that might be moving really quickly that we need to help weigh in on, and that sort of thing. So reach out to me or Hillary or any of our working group members if you want to be a part of that team. Thanks.
Katie, thank you so much. I wanted to pull in Jill Tucker very quickly as well, who is the CEO of Cal Animals, and the state of California pays attention to a lot of policy work. So Jill, could you just share like how great of a resource this would be, and just maybe one example of a policy that y'all got ahead of that could have been a negative impact for shelters?
Sure. I mean, we've got a great legislative committee that's reviewing all of the animal related bills coming through. We do have a lobbyist, so we get a heads up, which is appreciated, but we're at a point now where we have been able to get ahead of quite a few things. We were able to kill a bill last year that wanted to saddle our all of our agencies with this like giant breeder registration program that would have been like, you know, a big resource suck that maybe might have helped in like this minimal cases. And so there's a lot of things that come through that sound really good, but when we look at it, they're not enforceable, or they're not helpful, or they're trying to address a problem that doesn't actually exist. People like to introduce things without the support of data and facts. And so we're often able to redirect those things. But I just want to plug that I think the most important thing you can do in any state is make sure that you have a communication tool with all of the shelter directors in your state, so that when stuff comes up, you can talk about it and work together on it. And when laws change, that everyone's informed of it, because I think that's really important.
Thank you so much, Jill. Thank you so much to the Government Policy and Communication Working Group. And I'm going to toss it over to Mary Smith to close us out.
Okay, Bobby, you know how challenged I am clicking those things, so it seems like it takes an eternity. All right, you guys, I thank all of the speakers today. It was so empowering, so wonderful. A special shout out to Sharon Harmon for just creating the probably best place to work in animal welfare outside of all your shelters as well. So anyway, have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. And remember, you really do count. Even if you don't feel like people have your back, we all do. So happy weekend.